Dungeon, and today I'm talking about a topic I've been following for probably about a year: uh, the preservation of video games, uh, like the preservation of other types of art. An important topic to what should be more people, but video games are very niche and thought of as a bit frivolous. And I understand that to some extent. I mean, they're a type of entertainment that is almost a combination of movie and play. And the concept of play is not really taken, super seriously. But my opinion is that they share the same value culturally and socially and of historical importance as any Van Gogh or any um, what's a fairly so famous that it's almost like hackneyed kind of movie. Uh, you know, a Hitchcock film or I forget the one where they say Rosebud. I forget you know what I'm talking about. You movie buffs out there understand that reference. So there is a guy out there on the interwebs known as Ross Scott. Uh, he has a YouTube channel and a website. He's been making videos for a long time, and I caught wind of him back when I was in either late in high school or in college, watching his Freeman's Mind um, machinima, which is like using a video game and creating a story out of that, creating a narrative, videos, and great stuff. And I watched some of his other stuff as time went by. He's got this thing called the Game Dungeon, which inspired the name of what I call my room of video games. Um, and and he's been recently a big proponent of what he's calling "Stop Killing Games." So much the fact that he's dedicated himself to actual legal initiatives, not only in the U.S., which I believe he's from, but really even more strongly across the world in countries, Europe, Australia, I think even Brazil, in an attempt to force legislators in each of these respective countries to create concrete law to stop what I find, and I agree with him, a kind of a dastardly practice in the video game industry. That is to say, the destruction of games. Now, I keep saying don't killing games, destruction of games. What I mean by that? That is to say, there are types of games. This is really what the initiative is focusing on that don't work like a disc, like or a cartridge, like a Nintendo cartridge. Like I could at any time pop in Russian Attack, and you know, though they don't sell this anymore, this will always exist as far as I can keep it, in good condition and play it at any time. There are other types of games that are online that, though you will purchase them, spend money to play them, you don't physically own the entirety of the game. The game is separated into two parts. There's the client, that's the part that you have in your files on your own computer. And then there's what's on the server that runs the game and has the rest of the files. So you're basically divided. The game is divided into two parts: the client and there's a word for it. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong, but what the developer owns is the server based part of the game. Now, since the advent of these types of games, in the past, I don't know, 15, 20-ish years, not really counting MMOs, although those are a type. Um, well, inclusive of MMOs even. But more recently, outside of that, you have live service games is the term that is commonly used nowadays. Some examples are like Fortnite or Helldivers 2 is a really popular one that just came out recently. there are games that are not big names like this that they're created on this live service type of game, online only. You can only play the game if you have an internet connection because you need to connect their server. At a certain point, some of these developers will just kill the game. They'll announce, "Hey, we're no longer supporting it. You can't play the game anymore because we're not keeping the servers up for the game anymore." So essentially, what you've done is, uh, quote unquote, what they've done is quote unquote killed the game because despite the fact that you've purchased it, you have some program on your computer or even sometimes a disk. It basically doesn't work anymore. It's gone. It's donezo. Which to me is despicable because you have invested money into this. You expect some ownership, and there's not. You basically have just been said, well, fuck you. It's done. Goodbye. Appreciate the cash, though. Appreciate your cash. We're gonna release something else. You can buy that one too. Probably gonna get rid of it one day, but keep giving us money. So Ross has been, has a really big initiative right now, and especially in Europe, there's a petition that will put this in front of legislators' eyes if enough people see it. Unfortunately, I can't put my name on it because I'm not European. America, unfortunately, is not so great. In Europe, it seems like the greater avenue for making this law. And if it does become law, it will have an impact across the game industry. If it happens in Europe, it pretty much will happen, 'cause Europe's a big part of the industry. And it will have a ripple effect across all game publishers, even the United States. So it seems pretty concrete, pretty clear cut what the consumer's, interest is being protected here against what the publisher and the seller of the game. Though they believe the practice, the publishers, that is it's always been that way, long-standing, and nothing's been able to stop them. It does seem like governmental intervention necessary, and unfortunately, to date, it really hasn't been something that can be changed because number one, it's not really high on the radar on a lot of legislators' minds, and especially the United States, we take our contract law very seriously. Though there's anti-consumer, I'm sorry, there's law against really punishing the consumer. These contracts that, or they'd say terms of service that you often have to sign nowadays whenever you purchase one of these games, it pretty much screws the consumer. I mean, I don't think the case law supports fighting that because apparently, you're reading it and you're supposed to have acknowledged that. My argument against that is though most people believe you're buying a product and you're not buying a license to something, which is really honestly in the long history of video games, you've always bought the product. You've bought a physical thing normally that represents your ownership of the content of that game. I wouldn't have all we got here. I own all of these video games. There was someone argue I own a license to it, which maybe technically that could be true. There's no true practical way for any of the publishers after they stop selling these games to say, okay, give me my stuff back. You're done. It's gone. That's effectively what they're doing with these live service games. They say, okay, you're done. Your license. I don't care if you gave me money or not. I'm taking it back. And I'm 100% in support of this, and I've shared this to people. And to me, I thought it would be hard pressed to find any normal individuals who would find issue with that. Maybe they want something more specific in the language of this petition. And I'd say, there is some, unfortunately, you kind of risk alienating, number one, people's ability to understand what you're even trying to talk about, because it's a kind of very technical thing. You have to know a lot of these technical concepts, which I've taken the first almost 10 minutes of this video to explain. And number two, you also risk making your target goal, your litigation law, too specific that it does not reach enough of the substance, the content of the substantive, uh, issue to be covered. So I understand that. Now, recently, I found this cat named Pirate Software, and you know, good golly, I was just so taken aback by his perspective. But honestly, it's not too surprising because he's a quote unquote game developer. Uh, I think he does, as far as he's disclosed as to what he does in terms of sharing how to create video games. That's dope. That's really cool. Spreading that information as a lawyer, my job is to always kind of inform people on what they got in their hands, what they can do. And even young lawyers, I've probably taught dozens now about how to handle specific types of cases in the law and in when they're fresh. It's a person's, I think, duty when you have a good amount of knowledge to spread that to people and keep masses informed and you have a responsibility with that information and that knowledge. So that's good. Fortunately, that I think puts him at odds with what this initiative is trying to produce. That is to say, his perspective is I'm probably going to lose money if this would have happened because as a developer for these publishers, live service games have been a cash grab. I mean, it's like free fucking cash. It's not free, obviously. There's a lot of investment, but you have a game you developed. You charge out the wazoo for all cosmetics, battle passes, like expansions. Sometimes that's just to say if they're free. So you got to pay. Sometimes you got to pay for the damn game itself. Like Helldivers 2. I was really surprised that was a game you had to pay for, and then they also have battle passes. Good golly. And that's a fun game, but still, that to me is pretty lame. All these avenues for revenue for a game that you continually update until it becomes apparent that people are no longer interested, people aren't buying anymore, then you say, well, these servers are now becoming a little more, not as cost beneficial, let's cut it. Then the people who have been spending all that money for all these years are gone. I mean, they're messed up. The point is what I'm saying is that my understanding is that he would believe that this would limit that, and he's like, I love live service games. They're awesome, great. I wouldn't want to see them go away, which I disagree with. I think live service games can be cool, yeah, sure, but they're not an avenue to screw the consumer. They shouldn't be an avenue to screw the consumer. And I don't think just saying you're purchasing a license fixes the issue. Because number one, common layman doesn't fucking even understand the difference between a license and a purchase. They say, "Oh, there's a game. I'm gonna buy the game." That's it. You're still screwing the ignorant. Number two, you're still screwing the consumer because even if you do, you should not be paying for something that you don't own. You shouldn't. It's not like a car. You're not leasing a car. You're not renting a home. It's a video game. A video game is something that is small enough, should be inexpensive enough that you should claim ownership when you purchase it. And you should be able to play that anytime after the fact that it's done being supported. I will say there's a couple games that have done that. Avengers. I mean, how long is it going to last with their online service? Who knows? But so far, they've had an end of life plan. I would probably give them another year because it's probably going to be a dead game soon. But at least the very fact that they stopped supporting, they gave everything for free. They're still supporting online multiplayer, as far as I know. And so it's they're not making any money off that game anymore. They don't even sell it online. So, but they're still giving support. That's pretty cool. It's Crystal Dynamics, and it's probably being apologetic for how much that game kind of screwed up at the end of the day. Such a good concept, such a beautiful game, but damn, it's just like Suicide Squad. These live service games are just not great sometimes. And if there is a reduction on those kind of games, I don't see that as a negative thing for anybody. I only see it as a positive thing for the consumer. There's less risk that the consumer is going to be screwed by putting money into a thing that they think they own. and then eventually we'll never be able to play again. There's maybe more incentive to create good games, that don't suck and look good but suck in terms of their gameplay because they're being put on some sort of timetable by their publisher or they just don't freaking know what they're doing because they've never made a live service game. Avengers, Suicide Squad. It's too big. I mean, two superhero. They're both superhero games too. Uh, so I mean, it's I disagree with the concept that live service is the future or that they're the best types of games. Not even by far. They've always, in my opinion, been subpar comparatively to a good complete game. Although that's getting more and more rare as a game. Newer games come out. Some other perspectives they threw out. What else? That people are going to monetize the private service. So an option is that people will to stop the destruction of the games that in these online only games that they would have to give the data of the game, the source code or whatever the vernacular is to the consumer, and they would create their own server. And this guy is arguing that this would create monetization, that people make money and infringe on the IP. Number one, on this incentive in this initiative, there is very distinct language to say that publishers would not have to give up their IP at all. And the idea that people cannot protect their IP and when people, if they try, which they inevitably will, try to monetize these servers. I don't know if you know this. How many times a day do we see cease and desists? In the United States, at least, it's super easy to start protecting your IP. It happens all the time. Game publishers knock that shit out of the park. Nintendo knocks that shit out of the park. There is so much case law in the United States that protects intellectual property. That is a zero qualm. There doesn't need to be a registry of these servers. I don't understand why that would even be this guy didn't really have any idea about how this shit works. And he knows what he knows about games. He doesn't know anything about the law. That's fine. I mean, we all got our specializations. But that's not at all what the government would do. They wouldn't do that. And there's no even need to do that. You have private individuals who can protect their own interest. And if a publisher dies, guess what? More likely than not, they've been bought out already. 9 times out of 10, all these publishers are being consolidated into these bigger companies anyways, and being killed off by their publishers. I think Apple just killed off a publisher that they had purchased. Microsoft's done it a lot since they acquired Activision Blizzard. I mean, I know it probably makes them a lot of money in the meantime, but I think it's a bad idea to keep consolidating like this. Separate issue. Point is that there's going to be someone to protect the IP. And if there's not, and the game's not being sold anymore, sorry to say, I think it's not going to be such a big issue. And to the issue where some person is making hundreds of millions of dollars off somebody else's intellectual property. So I don't see that being a big issue against this preservation. I think the idea of keeping the games not destroyed and protecting the consumer really outweighs the issue about people potentially making some cash off of it. What else? The idea as to why you would want to quote unquote preserve a dead game also came up in this guy's arguments. That is to say that, when you play an online game, let's say like WoW, World of Warcraft, and there's nobody online, it becomes less fun because a lot of it is, a lot of the fun of those kind of games is a social aspect. You play with other people, and you want to play with people, when people stop playing, you have less incentive to play it. So why would you even want to keep it alive? Well, the same reason why I keep these two goddamn gigantic TVs, Most people don't have CRT televisions anymore because we have beautiful HD 4K televisions that are not that expensive anymore the way they used to be. And they're a better TV objectively for most common use. Uh, I can still keep my TV if I want to because I bought it. Just because nobody uses it anymore doesn't mean I don't want to use it. Um, there's a let's see a V. What else is there? Like just because somebody doesn't like a piece of art, let's say I'm the only person who owns a single piece of art, and maybe at one point a lot of people liked it, and a lot of people were watching it, and then people just lost interest in it. I guess we should just throw it out the trash. No, why would I do? I own it. I can look at it anytime I want to. Same thing goes for video games. Just because, let's say, in this theoretical world where nobody's playing WoW, I could love to just be able to go into Azeroth and walk around, still quest. There's a lot of single player action you can have in WoW. Uh, Create new characters. I mean, it's not just a game to exist because other people are there with you. You can enjoy something by yourself. And the fact that you've paid for it, you could do whatever the fuck you want with it. That's your god. To sound pretty USA, that's your goddamn American right to be able to do with what you want to do with what you bought. Just because somebody else isn't involved, that doesn't mean anything. So you are preserving it when you keep it alive. Just because other people don't play it, that's not the way it was necessarily designed to be played, doesn't mean you're not preserving it. There's a lot of art, there's a lot of assets, there's a lot of gameplay that is there that if you just throw it away, it's a waste. This cat, honestly, I think it's ironic. His name is Pirate Software, which implies that he's cool with pirating software. That's to say that he's cool with the use of IP without the creator's consent, not buying it, which is what people do with private servers. That's the whole big concern, is that you're pirating something, right? In the current landscape. So his name doesn't fucking make sense. Let's be clear. His name is like, I don't even know what his real name is. Thor or something. Cool first. Thor is a cool name though. I'll say that. His opinion so skewed against the consumer that it is astounding. It is so astounding that I actually found him because he was on Linus Tech Tips little video game news YouTube videos that they make. And I was just so appalled and surprised to see that somebody would actually be against this, that I felt compelled to make this video. Number one, if you're against this, you're anti-consumer. It's just true. I mean, I don't see a way around that. If you're against the preservation of video games in this aspect, that you're okay with the fact that publishers can just take games away from you whenever you want, whenever they want, just because they're under some kind of licensing agreement that really, honestly, just isn't read through by most people, it isn't understood by most people. It's just, and this is coming from a lawyer, legalese jargon to try to protect themselves in the event that shit like this happens. Is gross. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's disgusting, and this initiative doesn't fight developers just because you've done it a certain way for this many years since the advent of these kind of games in the internet. Doesn't mean it was the right way to do it. I use an analogy. NFL in the 90s, they discovered the CTE issue. And NFL was like, nah, that's no way. Concussions have nothing to do with this. There's no such thing as this. Let's throw it under the rug. It wasn't until 2016 when NFL finally acknowledged that their sport, NFL, I'm not sure I said, football, American football, established that CTE is possible because of their sport. Concussions cause this. It took almost 20 years of them doing a bad practice before people started filing lawsuits. People started going against them, where they finally had to admit, all right, maybe we're doing something wrong. It's the same thing with this game developer thing. It's not as serious as people freaking getting CT. Let me be clear. But it is the same underlying concept that they will not admit, publishers, that their practice is immoral and unethical for the consumer until somebody steps in and says, look, you guys are fucking people over. It's time to stop. And if you guys got to start making games the way you were making them, c'est la vie. Just because you like making games that way doesn't mean that's the only way to make games. Because guess what? There's probably more history in video games before live service games than there were after live service games. Maybe. That's actually a maybe. I'm not sure about that. But you know what? Games do exist more often than not live service. Uh, Complete packages of video games, multiplayer games. Mario Kart still works. There's always the Call of Duty or Team Fortress 2. And there's a bunch of examples of old games from back in the day that still work, that are online. A lot of a really big online component that are still playable today. So it's not impossible. Now, I'm not saying the same framework can work on these games from 20 years ago as they do today, but that's why we had the advent of change is necessary. You can't always just do it the way you want to do it because you like it that way. Otherwise, people would be screwed. We'd have monopolies. Just because the capitalism went on everything. That's why we have antitrust stuff. And then you have to develop law against what they accept as a common practice may not be good for the general public. That's what this is. And if you're for it, actually you're against this initiative, you're anti-consumer. It's very blanket, honestly. You're anti-consumer. You really don't care about the people who purchase these games. And you underestimate or you overestimate the ability of people to understand the difference between a license and a product in their purchase. I deal with a lot of people in my job, and most people don't understand the frick I'm talking about when I first introduce the legal concepts that surround my career and what I represent them for. And I have to bring into layman's terms. And even layman's terms is difficult for them to understand. It's not their fault. It's just I went to frickin' law school. I did a lot of training to understand these concepts. And 90% of the people I deal with have not. So you have to think outside your own brain. You have to think about what most people, how they view the world, and what they're going to think when they're doing this and purchasing games. And keeping games alive and keeping games playable is a really good thing. It's like the preservation of any art. It's keeping up those Greek statues, the Louvre with all of the beautiful art that I can't name right now because I'm uninitiated and I can't name a classical art. Starry Night, I know that one. Everyone knows that one, right? It's the same concept, except in this world, it's accessible by thousands of millions of people, and a small amount of people can cut that off forever. Not cool. So that's my opinion. Pirate Software, I think your opinion's total fucking bullshit. Sorry, that's really it comes down to it. And I sincerely doubt the quote-unquote analytics, I'm reading this, showed a huge amount of like ratio. I actually had to look up what the fuck ratioing means because I'm not in the lingo like that. But it's not too difficult to understand what like ratio. He's saying that more people like than dislike this thing, which I think you can't see on YouTube anymore, so you can say what the fuck he wants. I'd love to see a picture of it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But all the comments I've seen on the video he just posted yesterday and the first one he posted are all against what he's saying. And they all seem to have a bit of common sense that, dude, fuck is wrong with you? What are you trying to say? How can you even believe what you're trying to believe? Which you don't. You probably don't believe it. You probably don't believe it. You just want to make money, which is fine. I get that. Everybody wants to make money. This is capitalism 101. You want to make cash. But, sorry, there's really not a good foundational argument for what you're saying. And the moral and ethical underlying parts of the argument are not seen on your side. And that's why you're probably not going to win on that end. I think, there's a good chance you're going to be win anyways because it's an uphill battle. But at least what the people say, it sounds like, nobody's with you. And these publishers, unnamed publishers, you can't say anything because they're going to get fired. It kind of sounds like the boyfriend that doesn't exist. The girlfriend don't exist, right? The one who lives in Canada. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just saying. I could say a lot of things about people that, if I don't have to show them. So, that's my thoughts on that. And don't kill games. And visit stopkillinggames.com. I'll put a link. I don't put links in the description. I had the first time to do it. And go Ross Scott. And Pirate Software sucks.